Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dun & Bradstreet's Revenue Acceleration Summit. This session, Decoding Intent Data, Finding and Market Buyers within Target Accounts. My name is Andres Marquez, and I am the Portfolio Marketing Manager for our ABM and Digital Solutions here at Dun & Bradstreet. And before getting started, just a little bit of housekeeping. And during today's presentation, we invite you to submit questions that you may have using our Q&A box. And our session is scheduled to run for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have some time for your questions at the end. So without further ado, I just want to turn this over to Brandon, who's the CEO of Just, a wonderful agency. They're actually a partner of ours, and we couldn't be more happier of having them here talking to us today. So Brandon, let me turn this over to you, and it's all yours stage.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andres, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to talk about one of my favorite topics and one of our favorite topics at the agency, which is intent data. And again, I'm Brandon Friesen. I'm the CEO at Just. We're a global integrated marketing agency, and we're really big believers in harnessing the power of media, creative, and data all together to help grow our clients' businesses. Intent data is a very interesting topic, especially based on the world we're living in right now. Really accelerated by global events. We're living in this like technology-driven universe, right? And all of you as marketers understand this. It's more apparent to us than just about anyone because we make our living off of understanding changes in the market and dynamics and cultural shifts and things like that. And what we're in the middle of right now, McKinsey calls it the quickening. Right? There's 10 years of e-commerce growth in 3 months. The CEO of Microsoft says they've seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in just 2 months. And what's happening is, digital content consumption is really going through the roof, right? Digital news, streaming, podcasts, snackable content, deep dive content, right? All of this is accelerated as our home life and our work life collide. And as an agency that's been working with intent data sets, gosh, for about almost coming on 10 years now, it's really a topic that's never been more important with the amount of content consumption taking place out there. So today, what we're going to chat through is, what is intent data? What are the different forms of intent data? Why it is important to you as marketers? Then we're going to dig into some very specific intent examples and some use cases. From there, we're going to dive into how you can get started with intent data today. So let's get back to the basics. Okay, what is an intent data? And before we truly define intent data, I think it's important to start thinking about the evolving approach that we've seen in the market around data usage in general. So if you think about a lot of the traditional data sets, they were really geared around attributes, right? And this helps marketers ensure a qualified audience. It's, do we have the right company names, job functions, titles, or are the firmographics of our targeting right, the demographics? And these are all still very important attributes, pun intended, but where things are really have evolved is around interests. And this is allowing us to start to do a lot more buyer prioritization around things like purchase behavior, signals around search, interest and affinity that we find in various platforms, and then certainly intent, which is pulling data based on research that's being conducted online or through platforms. So, let's drill a little bit into intent data a little bit more here. And it really comes from content consumption patterns. So when we define intent, we think about data that's being gathered at an individual, but most often at an account level, a company level, and oftentimes at a location level that measures the heightened interest of specific topics. And these are often topics, right, associated with your business, with your products and services, but also most importantly in the right context. If you offer an enterprise, cloud computing solution, you don't want your intent signals being picked up from a consumer cloud offering. So context is really important in this environment. The ways intent data is often generated, there are multiple ways. And one of those is through data on your own website, right, or your own platforms. And the other is data being gathered from across the broader web. So this is the first party and third party data that we all leverage as marketers. And really, when you put first party, third party data together, this is where you can start to get much more advanced and do some interesting things. So again, most of you are very aware of first party data. This is your brand owned data, right? It's gathered from the activity on your website and your marketing automation platforms, your CRM platforms. This is data you own and that you're activating as part of your marketing efforts. The third party data sets, which is, there's a lot of in the market, a lot of different versions. This is data that's being aggregated by third party data providers. And they're getting this data from websites, from groups of websites, and even from across the open web. So let's drill down just one step deeper into first party and third party data. So starting with first party intent data examples. Okay, like I mentioned before, a lot of this comes from your website. So just an example of our own website here at Just, right? If a visitor comes to our website, maybe they came in from search or social, okay, we know they're now showing intent on our brand. We get excited, right? Now, more importantly, they're starting to show interest maybe on a specific topic based on the content they're consuming. So in this case, they're interested in brand to demand, and we're picking up that signal of a topic behind the intent of the audience. And then we're looking at things like, are they actually taking action? Are they showing signals where they want to reach out, potentially connect with sales, right? These are all great first-party intent signals. Then there's a myriad of data that comes from your MarTech platform. So, the company's coming to your website. A lot of you, I'm sure, are using IP analytics to, gather this first-party data on the audiences visiting your site, starting to use it for things like personalization. You're getting it from the contacts in your CRM database or your marketing automation database, and you're looking at various stages of buyer journeys and nurture paths and analyzing that data to inform actions you take as a marketer. Things like email campaign performance reports, right? These are all things that, these are all examples of first-party data sets that marketers can use to start to make decisions and inform their outreach to prospects. Now, third-party intent data, this is not data owned by you. This is data that you need to go work, as the name implies, with a third party. And so what many of these third-party data providers doing is they have their feelers out on the web. So in this example, here's a buyer, a potential buyer, and we picked the topic of intent. So they're actually researching intent in this case. And you can see we're interested in this topic, and we can see that they're starting to consume content around this topic. Now, not only that, we're starting to see that their colleagues are also researching these same type of topics. So now we're starting to create a bigger signal is being created. And since these data providers will use baselines to show, okay, this company XYZ is now showing more content consumption on this topic than they did previously. So therefore, there's a spike in intent, right? Now that we see this spike, and we know the topic that spiked, we can really start to activate this data in many different ways. So with that, let's chat about the benefits of utilizing intent data, of which there are many. And one of our favorite things with intent data is it really helps support the marketing and sales relationship, right? This is an age-old thing in marketing and marketing alignment with sales, and we're always striving to get closer to sales and hopefully vice versa. And so, when you start to use common intent data sets, you can start to bring these teams together, and you can start to get a lot of benefits and advantages out of these data sets. So sales is often using intent data to generate account lists, target lists, understanding the different topic interests of their prospects. Starting to do prioritization, right? Which account should we call on? We have, you're a BDR and you got to make 500 calls today. Okay, can we use intent to actually say, all right, which accounts are showing the most interest? And not only that, a lot of times we're getting alerts saying, hey, this account is spiking on this intent topic and via email or Slack. Sales is using intent to discover new prospects, improve retention, right? And ultimately the goal here is like, can we shorten sales cycles? Can we identify cross-sell opportunities? They're interested in solution A, but we see intent on solution B. Now's a good time to start bringing that up with our contacts in our database. And as most of you know, right, intent data is available and often integrated into CRM platforms directly so that sales can access that data. You know, marketing is going to use intent data to start to prioritize their marketing efforts, right? And the whole goal is, can we improve our return on ad spend and the dollars we're putting out in the market as marketers? So this is where we can start to do things, and we'll talk about more of this in some of the examples coming up, but like things like account segmentation. So can we take a list and can we actually segment it based on intent data signals? This is going to tell us things like, you know, are these accounts active on the topics I care about? Are they actively researching these topics? You know, it's going to allow you to start to develop your creative and content based on those intent topic interests that your prospective buyers are showing. You can even do things like start to target competitive intent and inform your marketing operations nurture paths, right? Or marketing automation nurture paths. So, you know, and there's even ways that you can start to measure brand marketing based on your own brand intent, right? Is the intent on your brand increasing in market, right? These are really great signals. So a lot of different benefits to intent, and in a lot of ways, this is bringing sales and marketing together around the account discussion, where you're actually talking about clients and accounts versus just, you know, clicks and impressions and traditional types of metrics. So yeah, with that, let's dive in to a few examples of how we can apply intent data. And all this is taken from real world activity that we've run with our clients here at Just. So we're going to chat through a bunch of different examples. This is not everything you can do with intent. There are many more use cases, but we wanted to give you some concrete examples here. So we're going to look at things like strategic account segmentation. You know, how can you apply intent to your digital advertising and your targeting? How can you use it to enhance your lead gen efforts for content personalization? You know, first party intent data usage around how do you de-anonymize site visitors and take action with that? And then we're going to talk a little bit about audience targeting analytics. So let's dive right into some of these examples. One of the most common use cases for intent data is starting to be strategic about how you do account segmentation. So let's say, you know, you've, as a marketer, you've sat down with sales and in your product marketing teams and your organization, and you've identified, hey, a global 2000, they're a perfect fit for our business, and we have a list of all these target accounts. Now, let's go market them. Well, if you take these accounts and you actually start to run them through an intent filter based on all the various topics related to your business, what you're going to be able to start to do is you're going to start to be able to segment these lists. You're going to start to be able to see, okay, which of these accounts are active based on the topics I care about, and which ones are inactive that really aren't showing any research on the topics relevant to our solutions. And then what that allows you to do as a marketer is start to build different plays to each account segment. So maybe with your inactive accounts, okay, you know, we want to generate more awareness and perception of our brand for them because we know they're not in the active buying mode right now. Maybe we want to deliver them a bunch of thought leadership content, right? But if we're seeing accounts active, not only active, but, you know, in this example, they're interested in hybrid cloud or customer journeys or ecosystem architecture consulting, right? Now we're actually seeing the intent behind these accounts. And what all of this is doing is it's informing and allowing us to look at our media mix, the creative we're delivering to each of these account segmentations, the experiences on our websites, our landing pages. And so just a very basic usage of intent data, but very powerful. So you can start to get a lot more intelligent about how you're engaging your prospects and your potential customers. So let's dive in. From there, you can really start to look at things like digital intent targeting. So this was actually something we did in partnership with DMB, where we ran an A/B test to 2 different groups. So we had all of our target accounts, you know, we had our demographics, our firmographics, but our one group we kept as our control group. the other group was our intent group, right? This was the group that was showing active interest and intent around specific topics to DMB. So we started to deliver creative to both target audiences. Now, obviously, we set up conversion tracking within our ad server. We're driving users both through clicks and through view through back to free trials, back on the DMB site. Users are engaging with those pages. The leads are then being sent into marketing automation for further nurture. So then when we go back and we actually start to analyze, okay, what was the difference between that control group and the intent group? What we actually saw was that we had a 22% increase in click-through rate to the intent group versus the control group. Much more importantly, we saw a 13% increase in conversion rate. So once someone got to the free trial page, they were converting at a 13% higher rate. And then ultimately what this did is it generated a 22% increase on the return on ad spend. So really great example of how just basic digital intent and targeting can improve performance in your campaigns. So now let's talk about how we use intent for lead generation. So this is an example with another client where we ran a 3-month test, and very similar to the last test I walked you through. In Group A, we had our content topics and our content, we had our firmographic data, our demographic data, but in Group 2, what we did is we layered in intent accounts. Okay, so these are accounts showing intent on the topics that our client cared about. We then take our content, we go deliver it across all the various lead generation vehicles. In guaranteed lead programs and inbound lead programs, this is intent data that's being activated through things like email deployment with offers to the content, telemarketing, things like social lead ads, right? And ultimately, once these leads were delivered, again, sent to marketing automation, and then on their path for nurture and scoring. And what we saw is that when we applied with the intent group, when we applied this data, we actually saw a 109% increase in pipeline down funnel, which is a pretty amazing metric. I'm definitely not going to sit here and guarantee that everyone's going to see a 109% increase in pipeline if you use intent data, but just a great example of the power of these type of data sets. And obviously a lot of other things involved to try to get that type of performance, but a really great use case here. Okay, so now let's talk about I say they're all our favorites because there's so many great use cases for intent data, but this is where we actually can start to use intent to drive creative personalization in real time. And this is in this example is where we're targeting audiences through DSPs or programmatic platforms, and we're targeting them with display media or native or all the different forms vehicles within programmatic. But since oftentimes intent data sets are integrated into these programmatic platforms, you can actually start to access these data sets in real time. So we go into the platforms, we set up our programs, we set up the topics we care about, and then as different segments of users show intent on different topics, in this case, examples being data flow, machine learning, cloud, now we're actually setting things up in a way that we can deliver and serve specific messages to each one of these audiences within our programmatic platforms in real time. And since there's so much content being consumed out there right now, and consumption patterns shift so much, this is just a great way to apply intent in again a real-time manner, so that you're activating it as those intent signals become available. And in this case, for this client, we saw an extremely high reach to our target accounts. We had a much better engagement with our target audiences, and it cut our cost per landing in half. So this is all about, right, serving the right message at the right time to the right audience. And intent data is one of the ways that allows you to do that. All right, we're going to shift a little bit more back to a first-party intent example. And this is where you can start to use the data that you're gathering as a brand to de-anonymize visitors, and then start to personalize things like retargeting and lead gen. So again, we just used an example of our own website here, but imagine your own site where a user is coming in and then engaging with different types of content on your site. So in this case, maybe someone's reading about our media planning and buying expertise, or creative or data insights, or maybe they're interested in kind of everything we're doing. But we're gathering these signals and we're actually looking at that as intent. They are showing intent around media. So then we can start to retarget these audiences with very custom and specific messages. More importantly, by using things like different data sets, we can start to unmask these anonymous accounts. We can start to see, okay, not only were they interested in this topic, but we know what account they were. So then we can take deeper content and start to deploy lead gen offers to try to convert them into a prospect if they haven't filled out a form on our site directly. So just a great way to start to use different data sets and start to activate those data sets again to build a more personalized experience for the audience. Okay, I think we have about one more example here. So this is audience targeting analytics, and this is an example of using intent to help inform activity on a brand campaign. Again, this is one of our favorite use cases. So this is where we have a digital audience that we're targeting, and we are doing a setup, and we're starting to deploy media across multiple channels. And what we're doing is we're actually placing an audience pixel from an intent provider into our ads, and we're then deploying that across all of the channels that we're running. And this is not just activation within like an ABM platform or something like that. This is all of our channels, our direct buys with publishers, custom content programs, right? We're activating this data across all of our channels through the pixel that we're placing in our ads via the ad server. And what's so cool about this is you can then start to gather data on the companies on the companies that you're engaging with without them ever having to click on the ad or actually start engaging with you. So you can start to see, okay, what companies are actually am I serving impressions to? You can start to look at things like what industries are responding to my messaging? What do the job functions look like? And there are so many use cases for marketing when you can start to look at this type of data, right? Because it starts to validate things like brand advertising. Hey, we didn't necessarily drive an exact lead from this activity because that's not what it was designed to do, but we can see that we hit this percentage of target accounts with our activity. And so this is really starting to align the conversation with sales and talk about how you're impacting these target accounts. It's also really allowing you to start to reduce waste in your advertising spend. So you can start to look across channels and say, okay, which ones were being the most impactful based on the accounts that we cared about. You can then also start to use this data and say, hey, these specific accounts, we generated a lot of activity against from a brand perspective. Now we can start to take this data and we can activate lead gen against it. And we can actually start to deploy different content and free trial offers, things like that, to this audience. You can also start to gain insights here that start to inform your creative and content. So, in this example, you're seeing like manufacturing, high tech, those indexed way higher than telecom. So maybe for our next campaign, we want to take this messaging and we want to make it industry specific and focus on some of these industries that are showing the most engagement with our brand, or even starting to look at content on a job function level. So the list goes on and on. There are so many ways to use intent data. And that said, we know it can be very overwhelming for marketers, and especially in this landscape where there's so many different options and there's just so much noise around some of these topics. So, I think one of the things we just wanted to kind of close out here today with is how you can get started with intent usage. So we're definitely big believers, as with all activity, is, start with a crawl, walk, run. And even if you're doing this quickly and failing fast, you can really start to inform your efforts. So in the crawl phase, most of you as marketers are already doing this today, but you can start to use that data that you already own, right? That website data, those data in the platforms. Again, most of you are doing this. But then you can start to leverage intent data that's baked into a lot of existing media channels out there. As I mentioned before, a lot of these third-party intent data sets are available right within programmatic platforms. They're available in platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook. And so you can start to use this intent data just based on the existing channels that you're leveraging. And then, of course, start to do things like de-anonymize your traffic and start to act on that based on different account signals. So from there, this is where you can really start to develop a more holistic audience targeting strategy, where you can start to leverage intent data for much more sophisticated account segmentation, where you're constantly running these data sets across your account targets. You're using it to generate new account targets, and then you're using this segmentation to build different marketing plays against these audiences. With that, it's also really important that you start to evolve your metrics and how you're looking at data. And so you can really start to deploy more intent and account-based analytics in your activities. And then ultimately, you can start to apply these intent strategies to omni-channel media activity. And this is where you're using common and similar intent data sets, and you're leveraging those across multiple channels. So you're really surrounding those buyers based on those different account segments we talked about. And then ultimately, the most sophisticated marketers we work with, they have a very holistic sales and marketing enabled intent strategy. This is where sales and marketing are very much aligned. They're having discussions together. Intent data is being activated in sales enablement within the platforms within the organization. That data is being fed back to marketing and vice versa. You're regularly using intent data to inform your creative and content production. And ultimately, again, you're starting to create an ongoing impact on sales to accelerate the funnel, because that's what it's all about. So definitely wish wherever you are on your intent journey, wish you luck with it. And even if you're just getting started, don't forget to always take time to go celebrate your success as a marketer. So with that, just want to thank you very much for listening to the session today. Thank you, DNB, for having me. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any follow-up questions directly at brandon@justmedia.com. You can also check out all of our various social channels. We welcome that, of course. But yeah, I think, Andres, I'll turn it over to you and see if we have any questions that have come up.
Yeah, great, Brandon. Thank you so much. And we couldn't be more happier of having you and your agency as partner of ours. Really great content, definitely. Before we move over to the questions, we have something here special for you. And it's also our way to say thank you for being present today. So you can just follow this link, and we've got something for you where you can get a totally free and in-market account list. So just follow that link and you'll be able to fill out a little form, and someone from our team will be reaching out so they can have a customized in-market accounts list customized for your business. So without further ado, let's turn it over to the questions. We're seeing a couple of them popping up here. And I have a couple of folks kind of asking the same thing, Brandon, and they are asking that should intent data be the only targeting technique I use in digital?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know Andres, I know we talk a lot about intent data and the power of intent data in a lot of use cases, but no, absolutely not. Intent targeting should not be the only data that you're using in your digital activities. There are a lot of other powerful data sets in the market that you should be leveraging in your mix. I think one thing that was pretty popular back in the day even was something like contextual targeting. And that type of targeting is really still relevant today, especially when you do things like an IP overlay on top of a contextual target. Like those type of techniques really work. There's also ways you can start to put pixels on your site, or you can start to analyze data based on conversions that you've already have, and then you can build that to do things like lookalike models. And gosh, there's other behavioral data sets. There's a million different ways, and what we always just recommend is test, right? Test a lot of different data sets, start to hone in on what you should use. All of that said, in our experience of using these intent data sets for many, many years now and watching the evolution in this marketplace, intent is definitely one of the most powerful tools that we see in the market for our targeting.
Okay, great. So we have Michael here asking, what type of intent providers give me the ability to use intent across my media channels?
So is this about kind of how you can leverage intent data like across a broad ecosystem of media channels?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, that's a great question, right? There are a lot of different intent providers in the market, and there's a lot of different flavors of intent. So I think what you'll find in the marketplace is you will find, I guess, intent providers that we look at as intent in more of a closed environment. Okay, this is maybe a publisher or a set of publishers who are looking at intent signals specific to those brands that they run. And typically you can only activate that intent data right within those specific channels from that partner. We then see a lot of these all-in-one ABM platforms in the market. Many of you know them as marketers. You get a lot of outreach from them continuously. And there's a lot of great platforms out there. And again, a lot of them are building intent into their platforms. However, when it comes to activating media channels, oftentimes those media channels within those platforms can be pretty limited. And quite often we find it's like you can use intent for display media and not across other channels. And so, the other form of intent data is more that comes more from an open ecosystem, where you can get a subscription to an intent platform, and then this allows you to leverage that data across many channels and actually start to inject those data sets across display, social, native, streaming audio, streaming video, lead gen. And so, it kind of just all depends on where you are as a marketer and how you want to use these data sets. But definitely different types of intent providers give you different abilities to activate it across different channels.
Okay, great. So again, Brandon, I really appreciate your time today, and I really appreciate all you guys for connecting with us in this session. We will try to follow up with some answers for the questions we couldn't answer today. And again, thanks again for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks everybody. My pleasure. Thank you.
Wow, what a day it's been. Tremendous content, tremendous presenters, and tremendous value for everyone. Now, before we say goodbye, I just wanted to give a special shout out to all of our panelists for the insights that they shared with us in order to help us all think and act differently. The time to embrace change is absolutely right now. Now listen, all of these sessions have been recorded, so if there's something you missed or something you'd like to share, you can come back to the landing page and view it on demand anytime. Also, if you have any questions or would like someone from our team to follow up with you, please just let us know through the question and answer box for this session. And on behalf of the entire Dun & Bradstreet team, I wish you all health, happiness, and success as we head into the final months of 2020. Let's grow.